I am really excited for this panel. Before we went live, we were there's a lot of joking around and fun banter, and we're excited to kind of share our energy with you today. Let's start off with some introductions. So as you introduce yourselves, could you tell us what your favorite medium is, and also describe your relationship with art? If maybe that's kind of an open-ended question, but Laura, can we start with you?
Absolutely. So my name is I go with L Palmer online. If you want to look up Laura Palmer, you'll find a lot about Twin Peaks and how I'm dead. If you don't get that joke, look it up, and you'll be much more amused. But I write a series of fairy tale retellings that are kind of like if you took the setting of Downton Abbey and then you mixed in magic, adventure, and sword fights. So that's the Pippington Tales. And very fun, very warm and fuzzy. And for me, art is a passion and a need. It is also a, hey, could you go sit over there for 5 minutes while I do my day job? Because I need to focus on the spreadsheet.
Great. Michaelbrent, could you go next?
Sure. My name's Michaelbrent Collings. I'm an international bestseller, Dragon, Whitney, Bram Stoker Award finalist, all that good stuff. I'm best known for horror, but I have written around 40 or 50 books, and I've had bestsellers in every genre, from horror to nonfiction humor to mystery and even romance. And I also design all my book covers. So my relationship with art is complicated, like most artists. I heard it once said, you're a writer when the only thing worse than writing is not writing. And I think there's some accuracy to that for most artists. I love doing it. I'm privileged to have this as my full-time job, but it sucks sometimes. And, being waken up in the middle of the night with what people call an inspiration and what a lot of us creators know as horrible insomnia because ideas, that's not super fun. It does get the job done, but it sucks on a lot of levels. So I love art. I wouldn't give it up, but I also want to murder it sometimes. Oh no.
Rowan, why don't you go ahead while we're working on getting Beth back?
Beth, no! Right. Oh, the humanity! Okay, hello.
The vortex.
I'm Rowan North. I'm a freelance illustrator and art educator. I majored in art education and minored in illustration and took some theater art classes on the side, pretty much. And all of that together made for an interesting college life. I ended up leaving college early to pursue my career in art. And so I do it full time, or attempt to, as my mental health allows. But don't even get me started on that. That's, I guess, what this panel's for.
That's what the panel's about. Once you finish introducing yourself, then we can get started on it.
We'll get there. You can find my stuff at rowannorthillustrations.org. I do a bit of everything and then some. I make dolls, posable dragons that sit on your shoulder. I make jewelry, resin jewelry. I make my own handmade watercolors. I just release pre-orders for my set of color shifting paint. I've recently get into bookbinding and paper making, and I of course do fantasy and horror illustrations. Those are my focus. So yeah, that's me. And is Beth back?
Yes, I am. Here, let me turn on my camera. Sorry about that, guys.
It's okay. The vortex is pulling a lot of us throughout the day.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. All right, so one thing that I wanted to cover, I know this is on art therapy. The question is, can anybody be an artist? And I'd like to ask you guys, just open it up to the panel, when did you take the leap from just messing around with watercolor or whatever to self-identifying as an artist?
I guess I'll go if we're
all right.
Just give a couple seconds for everyone else. Okay. So, Oh, who did we lose? Did we lose Beth again?
No, that's Michaelbrent.
Like Michael.
No.
So just keep going, and
Okay.
hopefully the vortex
Hopefully he'll come back.
All right. So, I mean, I've been drawing my whole life. I never really stopped. I always drew during classes. Turns out, and as I just found out this year, I have ADHD. So I would focus way better if I was drawing in class, and that explains so much. And the teachers hated it, of course, and always encouraged me to stop, but I couldn't stop. And I was decently good at it, not to toot my own horn, but I was, growing up, I was better than most. Finally, I thought I was going to go into costume design in college. That was actually the original thing I was thinking I was going to go into. But then I decided that no, I want to go into illustration and then into art education as part of that, because I wanted to share so much of that process with others. And unfortunately, my college experience was terrible, and my mental health was the worst. Like, I mean, I've had a lot of bad mental health things that have happened to me, but it was really bad. So I finally decided, hey, you know what? I'm succeeding in doing the things that my teachers are telling me that I shouldn't do. So, and I'm making money at it. You know what? Screw school. I'm gonna be an artist, and that was a hard decision, and a lot of people I knew kind of frowned upon it, but they're laughing now. They laugh with me because I wouldn't say I've made it, but I'm still doing it. But that's the moment where it went from, I set my career in motion, so to speak.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing.
I've been writing since I was probably 14 is when I really got the bug. And the benefit of being a writer versus an illustrator or artist where you're drawing is that when you're sitting there and working on your books in class, the teacher thinks you're taking really good notes versus that you're doodling. Because I would do totally the same thing, and I'd be working on and then there was a major sword fight in my class, and they just think I'm taking notes versus drawing the sword and things. So there's a benefit there. I have a ridiculous amount of education. I was just thinking about that with that, but I think everybody's path is different to what they need. For me, I have a double major in English and film for my bachelor's degree, and really that to me is both of those are about storytelling. At its core, no matter what medium you're in, even in art, you're telling some form of a story. And that was a big deal for me. And then when I was about in my mid-20s, I wrote a lot of not very good novels for a long time. And then somewhere in my 20s, my mid to late 20s, I would have this moment of I keep saying, yeah, I want to be a writer, and yeah, I want to write these books, but I'm just doing it I'm afraid to get out there and get feedback and do the work to reach a professional level. And so I took a couple years to go to writers groups and get critiques and really study the craft and get to that professional level. And then I'm currently self-published, but one of my goals is to try to get traditionally published and establish myself more firmly as an artist. But meanwhile, I've had, I like many other people, I have to live a 2-track life. That I have my day job career, where I make, that's what pays the bills and keeps a roof over my head. And then I have my art career that I hope someday that if I take the right steps, that I'll be able to make that my full-time gig. But I'm not to that stage right now. I've got a lot of work in between that I've got to do that. And so I've got to balance I do this as an escape from my regular everyday job, but I'd also need to put in that extra level of work to market and to do the business side, so that way it can grow, so it eventually it can either supplement my income or it can become my income. And that's a bit of a challenge, because you want that artistic fulfillment, but you've also got to think about the less fun things of, okay, I'm a self-published author, I want new covers, how much is that going to cost? How many books am I going to have to sell in order to cover that cost and things like that?
Thank you. So, Michaelbrent, I know we lost you for a minute there. The question is, when did you make the leap from just kind of messing around to self-identifying as an artist?
Oh, okay. So this is one of my weird quirks. I do not self-identify as an artist. I don't. I am a guy who makes hamburgers. It's just my hamburgers are of the mental variety. I have kind of and that's not to knock anybody who says they're an artist. There's no judgment attached at all in that, and I really mean that. It's just like I'm just doing this thing that I hope people will like and it will improve them. I will say that not calling myself an artist frees me up to edit a little bit more easily because it's not my art. It's a hamburger. And if you don't like it with pickles and nobody else likes it with pickles, I have no personal attachment to pickles. I'm just trying to sell the hamburger, So I've never looked at myself that way. That being said, I grew up in the home of my father is one of the most published poets in the United States. I mean, he's published thousands of poems, and he was the creative writing director for a major university. So I grew up with that stuff in the house, and it pervaded everything around us. And I love art. I love poetry. I love literature. I love stories. So but again, I was never looking at myself saying I'm an artist, and I was a lawyer, like you guys were talking about, having that day job. I didn't want to be that stereotypical 40-year-old guy bringing home women to my mom's basement and being like, any day, baby, it's going to happen, So and people do that. And again, that's their choice, but it just wasn't for me. So I'm like, I'll be a lawyer because that's the last refuge of the incompetent. And I worked as a lawyer for 10 years almost. And every night I wrote for 3 or 4 hours and eventually made it work. But all through that, it was like, this is something I love to do. I love to tell stories, but I can very easily identify myself as a storyteller and have never been able to look at myself as like, this is art. And maybe that's just my own low self-esteem that I need art therapy for, just not viewing myself at that kind of level.
So I think you brought up some really interesting points. So the next question I have for kind of a follow-up question is, what is the definition of an artist? Looks like we lost Michaelbrent again. But how would you, Rowan and Laura, what is in your mind the definition of what makes an artist?
Someone to make something creative. It could be, your art could be bedazzling t-shirts, bedazzling your cat, but just do it safely. There's even art in other things. This is my nerdy work side, but there is an art to certain Excel sheets that you get really proud of. Like, I made a really pretty Excel sheet that does this so elegantly. So that there's artistry and everything is just coming at it from, I think, a creative viewpoint.
So what defines an artist? First off, I think it's the tenacity to do something. Like I would say that an artist has a physical output of some sort. Granted, we do have things like poetry, which I would consider an art form. We have things like performance art, which is buck wild stuff, and it's usually has to do with the human body and you standing there for a few hours. But I don't get it, but hey, good on ya. But that still is, an expression of self. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. I consider my home and my clothing, the things that I wear, even my makeup, I consider part of my art, for instance, because it's such a physical output and a showing of, my nature, my creativity, who I am. And granted, that's a very, very broad thing, but I think it ultimately is you put effort into it. You make decisions to make that happen. That is what art is to me.
I think those are some really good answers. So I think it's good to keep it broad because there are so many creative people out there that don't think that they're creative, even though they very much are. I saw a photograph of some electrical wiring work one time that had been done on, it was actually on an LDS temple. And just this electrical wiring was just very, very ordered. And the person who was showing it to me was actually a contractor. And he said, this maybe doesn't look like much to somebody who's not an electrician, but this is electrical art right here. And I thought that was quite interesting. Another thing is, like when I was in high school, I took a design class, and the teacher there said that anything that you create, anything that you make, can make a statement, whether it's a chair or a desk or these everyday things can they make a statement and kind of say, they tell you a little bit about who made them. So let's see. Moving on. So what advice do you have for people who are just kind of messing around right now with their medium, whether it be paint or words or woodworking or something like that? What advice do you have for them who want to make that leap from just kind of dabbling to maybe becoming more serious as an artist?
So the first thing I'd say is be freaking careful. We live in a society that wants to take hobbies and turn it into work. And that can destroy your passion. That's the first thing I want to say, is that if you are wanting to make this your work, figure out a way to keep yourself passionate about it. And I fall into this trap all the time. Believe me. Why do you think I dabble in so many mediums? It's that if things start feeling like work, then I move on to a different part or a different thing. And that makes sometimes commission work a little difficult, but those are the times where I have to say, okay, these hours are work, and then I can work on my own thing. As long as I focus on work for like maybe 3 hours, I can move on to my own thing. I'd say, yes, please be very careful. Don't burn yourself out. It's so easy. And if you want to keep it a hobby and keep it to yourself, don't be afraid to. Share it online with your friends. That's how I started. And yeah.
I think that last bit is true. Think about what you really want, because you could dabble in trying to put it out there, which is a really good a good thing to do, and then decide, you know what, I just want to keep this to myself and do it for fun and not have to worry what other people think. And that is perfectly okay. I think a lot of other times we feel pressure to push that thing forward to that more professional level. But it's okay to I just do this for fun. And if other people like it, great. And if not, that's okay too. And I think that's spectacular. And then, I think what Michaelbrent Collings was saying earlier about, like, I make hamburgers, that when you're making it a business, sometimes you kind of have to distance yourself from that emotional investment you have when it's more of a hobby, because that helps you be able to make the decisions that are going to do better as a business than as an art form. But similar to what Rowan was saying, you also have to find that passion for it. And one thing I found really interesting this last year, so while things have slowed down, one of the things for me is I am a very busy person, that I usually have about 3 to 4 things going on in my life. I've got my full-time job. I have a calling that's like a small time. I have my volunteer position for church is like a part-time job outside of works a lot of times. And then I try to do writing. And then with writing, you have actually writing the book, getting things critiqued, and then trying to get people to actually buy your books that are out there. And that just keeps, you're just running and running and running. And this year, with everything slowing down, a lot of the stuff I was doing, I had a lot more time. And I think it was a combination, and if this comes to the therapy side, a combination of, for me, writing became an escape from all of the stress that I think we're all feeling as we go through this pandemic. And it is impacting all of our lives. I think of it like a high-pitched whine in the back of your head all the time, that there's just this layer of stress to everything because of it. And I think for me, the way that my mind compensated for that was like, I'm going to go escape into this magical world. And I usually write about 200,000 to 300,000 words a year. And last year I wrote probably 700,000 to 800,000. And around the time that I got to book 7 or 8 that I'd written in a year, I went from what I usually do, which is I'm writing the story because I really love the story because this is what I want for me, to, well, I've already written 6 books this year. So this one, I think then we'll do this one for the people that, like, I see a lot of people like these types of tropes. So I'm going to try and write a book with those types of tropes, kind of that more writing to market mentality. And I just thought that was an interesting shift that I never thought I would get to, but because that things slowed down, I kind of had the opportunity to experience that transition from writing for myself, for my own creative input, to writing for, I care about this product because I'm writing it, but I'm more writing this as, this is a fun experiment. And if it sells, it sells. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But this is not my baby. This is just another book that I'm making.
So real fast, you are very lucky that that's how you've managed to cope with the pandemic and everything that's been going on, because that is not me. For me,
No.
There's been months where I haven't even been able to draw anything. And part of that is because of my mental health struggles and me realize, like, my ADHD, because of the anxiety of the world and things, that panic mode getting way worse. And not knowing exactly how to cope with it because I didn't know I had it until this past year, pretty much.
Wow.
And just all of that. Yeah, there's been months where there's been nothing, and it's been killing me because you've got that constant anxiety in the back of your mind, like, I should be doing things. What am I even doing? And not being able to output anything. And it's just
like,
so frustrating.
I think both I've seen through social media things, both of what you and I are talking about, they're completely opposite.
I know, it's so weird, isn't it?
Yeah. And both
it's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a weird year for everyone.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I guess fortunately for you guys, but unfortunately for me, you already answered the questions that I was going to ask you about art as therapy. So
we can get into more specifics and things like that. There's a lot to cover here. Yes. I feel. So, like, for instance, like working with children and the fact that if creativity is taken out of the classroom and things like that, I've noticed more depression and anxiety just in school in general, and more mental struggles because of the cutting of the arts. That's a huge thing.
Let's go in that direction for a while. So I mean, I'm coming here as a mom of 6 kids. That's a lot. And so, but I've noticed that my children in particular get really, really anxious, and I noticed this about myself too when I was a child. I'd get really anxious if I had to just sit and look at math or just do the worksheets, right? And those art classes, they were only like twice a week in the school that I went to, but I would live for those. And so I can only imagine when those are cut out, just it's like taking away your very favorite things of school. So would you like to elaborate more on that, Rowan?
Yeah, I was just answering one of the comments here, which was that I use art to help me listen. I hear lectures and talks at church better if I draw. And then people were saying, me too. But,
I'll show you the notes that I've been taking right here. Like,
all the doodles. That's so awesome. But yeah, for me, I would fall asleep if I didn't. With the introduction of fidget toys, that actually has helped somewhat. I if I don't have something in my hands, you'll notice that even at these panels, I'll do a lot with my fingers and hands and tug on my sleeves and bite on the top of my lip and things like that. And that seems to focus that energy being allowed to draw in school. And yes, I am listening, and so many people are. So many people, I think, are very similar in this way. Never mind that, like, we have 1 in 3 people have ADHD. I think that's 1 in 3, 1 in 4. And those are some things that can actually help with that. Granted, there's a lot to say about ADHD in general, like if it's like about it, and a lot of debate around it, but in general, that helped me. There were literally times where I would fall asleep in classes, even in college, like especially in college, which is wild because my brain can't focus on what they're saying. And I had no control over just nodding off. I would try to chew gum. This is how I got my caffeine addiction. Is trying to stay awake in class, but I didn't realize that it was because of neurodivergence that I couldn't stay awake in class. But yeah, so as these arts are being taken away and things like that, yeah, I would have a lot of anxiety about math too, thinking about your kids, Beth. For me, I'm a kinetic and a visual learner. Those are the ways I learn. You can look up the different learning styles and things like that. So I'm very hands-on. My hands need to be doing something. And then having visuals and having pictures helps me understand. Do you think they have that in algebra? Not really. I failed algebra like 3 times. So, and it's not from lack of trying. I had tutoring after school and things like that. It's just these broad topics that you don't really see the point in. I just really struggled with. But applied maths, like figuring out percentages and how do you slice this pizza, or how do you figure out the Pauling averages and things like that. Once with those applied maths, which was the next math class I took in college, it was like, oh, this makes so much more sense. I don't care if it's the dumb people's math. It it helps.
Dumb people's math.
Yeah.
It's the everyday math.
It's everyday math, but it was considered that there was kind of the whole feeling like, oh, the dumb people are there.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
Yeah. No, I think understanding basic math is good. I think it's a matter of feeding the whole person, in a way of having that art side that you have right brain, left brain, you have your logical side, and then you have your creative side, and both of those need to be nurtured. Both of those need to grow, and some of us have stronger one side or the other. I think I'm pretty balanced between the two. I do a lot of when people ask me what my job is, I'm like, I do math about trash. That's my day job. I work for a major city, and I've worked for the trash department for the last 3.5 years and know way more about the economics of recycling than anybody ever needs to know.
That's pretty darn cool, though, I have to say.
Yeah. So if anybody needs that for world building, like how does recycling really work? It's Thriller with recycling smuggling. There is recycling smuggling, by the way.
Really?
Yes. But that's a whole other panel.
Oh, okay. I have to look that up.
And you should do math about potatoes. It's a good comment.
That's amazing.
But having that full part of yourself. And so for me, I actually work, I've worked on an innovation team because, and what works really well is that I do understand that logical side, but I can bring to it that creative side I have because of my writing, and writing it's creative and it's also problem solving. And so it's kind of a mix of both. But one of the greatest benefits I had is the most magical fairy godmother art teacher I had in high school. But I have 4 biological siblings and then 2 adopted siblings, and all of my biological siblings and myself all had this art teacher, and she's now a family friend that we keep in touch with, even though she's retired. And she's just one of those wise fairy godmother, like, oh yes, here's exactly what you needed to hear today. And now everybody feels welcome and loved and warm and fuzzy. Magical people. And even though art for me, visual art, I can do it if I work at it. But I sit there and I'm like, am I done yet? Versus if I get into writing, I can get into a zone and I'm flying. But I learned so much about creativity by taking that art class, and so much about myself as an artist through that. And so I think that's why it's really essential to allow children and adults to experiment with creativity. I think a great, interesting kind of social experiment is painting with a twist. Because I've gone there with friends, and a lot of the people are like, I have to make this paint by numbers where it has to match the thing exactly. And then I'm sitting there like, that's boring. And I'm adding texture because I feel like it. And I'm a little bit ahead because I'm not an amazing artist, but I understand it enough. And then we had a moon and like a background with the night sky. So I made the moon into the Death Star and added a Star Destroyer because I was like, this is way more fun. And my friends are like, what are you doing? And other people are like, that's not the picture, while they're giggling. And I was like, yeah, I know it's not the picture. I'm thinking about Death Star.
So I actually have to add on to that, like that's not what the instructions were. I actually had an art teacher absolutely hate my guts. In fact, she had a nickname for me in part of my French, but her nickname for me was Little Shit. I wish I was kidding. No, she hated me. When I was getting into art education, I actually ran into her again because there was like an art teachers conference that's here in Utah every year. And when I was there, she was so furious because she thought that I was just too off to be an art teacher. And like at one point I was helping, like there was more of an abstract art class or panel that we were doing, because basically these teachers would hold panels just like here at LTUE for different lesson plans. And it was thrilling. I loved it. But I was helping a teacher do this abstract art thing where they were asked to kind of draw a face from memory, and she couldn't do it. You know, there's people who need those references to draw, and all different kinds of art, I guess. And I said, and I was telling her just like, listen, here's the thing: is you need to know that stuff about face and use reference, so you know the rules, so you can break it properly. And I didn't realize that teacher was sitting 2 seats away from me, and I hear her so loud that everyone could hear it. Yep, that's her, all right. But it's because, you know, I don't follow the rules. I don't. I do my own thing. I always have, both being free-spirited and, I guess, neurodivergent. I want to do my own thing. I want to explore my own thing. I want to... What's the fun of doing things that people have done before? Why not explore, you know?
Anything I'm doing, I look at the rules and I think to myself, okay, these rules are reasonable. These rules are stupid. How much should I ignore them?
I think we are all chaotic good here. I think that's what we're learning.
Yeah, I'm not
forget lawful good.
Like, if it's a reasonable rule, I'll go with it. But if it's a dumb rule, and I work in government, so you can imagine what rules there are.
That's incredible. Yeah, no, once again, like, I will preach to the end of my breath, like, please learn figure drawing and to learn to draw from life and use reference, because those things inform your work so much. But then you break those rules. You use it to create your own style and form your own work. You just get better from that, even if you have to torture yourself through, you know, looking at naked bodies. Wait, torture?
The body.
So I kind of want to back up a little bit. Earlier, one of you was talking about how creativity can be problem solving. I'd like to explore that idea a little bit more. Up until fairly recently, I happen to know that the cafe in the Novell building used to have little bowls of Legos on them. And so the point being, so my husband used to work for Novell. This is how I know this. And so the point of that was you'd have all these programmers, they'd come down for like a sandwich or something, and then they'd play with these Legos on the table, and then they'd be like, oh, that's how that works, that's how it fits together. And then they'd finish their sandwich, and then they'd go back up to their office and solve their problem would be solved. And so I'd like to hear more about your thoughts on that.
I think developing that creative space, I think it's similar to having artist block or writing block, that you walk away from whatever wall you keep pounding against and go wash the dishes, go for a walk, take a shower, just go do something else and use your brain, pull your brain in a different direction for a while. Sit there and doodle, go play a video game, just get away from it and then come back. In my day job, in the innovation team I worked on, we would have a running game of Scrabble for a while. Then we had a running game of Catopoly, so Monopoly, but with cats. And your properties were different cats that you got. And then with that, speaking of breaking rules, about 3 of us were getting fed up with one person who was winning. And so we would, on the side, we would talk about how we were going to mess up the game on purpose to make it harder for him to win. We didn't care about winning. We just wanted to frustrate him because he was like, but these are the rules. And that became our problem solving, is like, how can we work within the rules of the game and negotiate? Like, I'll trade you this cat for this cat so that I have this row because he's about to land on that. And mess with them. You pay rent on a cat. We decided that it was for petting the cats. That you got to pay rent to pet the cat. It's just about allowing yourself to think in different directions. And for me as a writer, even, that's why I'll try out, and I'm sure Rowan does this with different mediums, I will try out different genres and things every so often, just so that way I'm keeping things fresh and working things up, kind of turning things up.
So thinking about that, renegotiating the rules or things like that, that same conference, that art teacher conference, there was a class on encaustics, and oh my gosh, this woman was not my kind of person who was teaching it. She was very much like a rules lawyer, like, you can't do this with that, you can't do that, it won't work. And just the whole time I was sitting there with this frustrating, like, fuming. And I do this a lot, and this is one of the reasons I left school entirely, because I was like, watch me, bitch. I mean, I'm so sorry. But I've since experimented with encaustics. Granted, it's very expensive, and so I haven't had money to pour into that as much as I want to. But it's like, don't limit yourself. However, if you want, I mean, every man's for yourself. If rules make you feel comfortable and that's how you're better able to express yourself, like, okay, ADHD brain. Did you guys know that there are people who cannot visualize? They don't see visuals in their head.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear that this thing, but that's not how. I mean, I'm very visual in my head, and so that's just kind of weird for me.
Isn't it
but I
weird?
understand that it's, I know. Yeah.
But no, actually, I saw this thing on Twitter, and I feel like this is I will pull back around and make this relate. Trust me.
Okay.
So basically, visualize an apple, and I want everyone in the comments to do this too. Visualize an apple. What do you see? How realistic is it? Is it vivid? Are you seeing a real apple? Are you holding a real apple? Can you smell that apple? I know a lot of writers can actually visualize everything from the sound of plucking it, this crispness of the apple. I can't. For me, it's very animated. It's 2-dimensional. And this is kind of like the second layer of it. It's more of like an anime, actually, where it's very, very vivid green trees with that cell shading. And it's more of an animated hand that's reaching up, very soft color, like vibrant colors. I do hear sound, but it's not realistic. And sure enough, that's the style. Like, I can do realism. I have it in my power to do realism, and I have done it before. But that's my brain immediately plugs into more of this animated, cel-shaded style when I imagine things. And then there's some people who, there's some people who imagine even less than that. Like perhaps it's a faded scene, vaguely the idea of an apple. And then some people who cannot visualize at all and who are still artists. Anyways, pulling that back around, it's just for some people, everyone works differently, and that's the thing to remember. Some people have the ability to do realism and want to do that photorealistic and that focus. I don't have that level of focus. Yes, I can be detail oriented, but I'm often jumping from part to part. What my art becomes is a conversation between me and the piece, a discovery process, taking jewelry apart, adding like gemstones and things like that. I get super into an idea and super hyper focus on a kind of art, and then I apply that to my other art. But for other people, that's not how it works. That's not how art works. That's not how the world works, and that's perfectly okay. So, typically people think that artists are these super chaotic people, and I'm certainly a stereotype, but the truth is anyone who wants that, they just need to find what works for them, and it's entirely different.
Let's see. Well, we're kind of running a little short on time, so let's open it up to some questions.
They're saying that the video is a little bit freezing and buffering at the moment.
Yeah,
okay.
No, I had issues with that in watching Caitlin's panel, which was before this one, so it might just be the internet.
What is this?
Yeah, I think while we're waiting for questions, I just want to add just a note that Rowan, I think, touched on a little bit. And I think we've all heard a ton of times, when it comes to your art, if you want to do it at a professional level, you need to know the rules before you break the rules of what makes something good, what people expect. You need to know what those are and know how to hit that before you break it, versus breaking it on purpose because you're a novice. And then being like, well, I did that on purpose because it's an artistic expression, but you don't understand it enough to know what impact that can have. So it's better to learn how to do it well, the like right way, and then be able to say, okay, now that I understand that, I can take this and I can twist it into what it needs to be.
Okay, we do have an audience question for you if you're ready for it.
Yes, we're ready.
Emmy asks, do you guys ever change up mediums or for different therapeutic reasons?
Yep. Yep. Did I just I'm a mixed media artist. I call myself a mixed media illustrator. And I do everything and then some because it's because I'm such a kinetic learner. I always want my hands on things. I want to feel, I want to learn new things. If I don't know how to use it, I'll figure it out. Like I said, I do dolls. So that means working with clay, and that's a very kinetic thing. And actually it helps my art be better further on because then I can start visualizing in 3 dimensions. The making books is my most recent thing. And that was actually to help pass time when I sprained my ankle because I was stuck in bed. So I made 2 books, and I'm starting to work on a few more, but sometimes it just feels good to switch it up because you get in ruts, mental ruts all the time.
Sometimes sometimes I'll make little videos, or I'll do little doodles that aren't great, but they're just fun. And sometimes also write things, but all of these will be really stupid on purpose. Like, this is a really dumb idea and this is really stupid, but it makes me giggle because it's so stupid. And I find that really kind of frees my brain from all of the pressure of trying to make something at the quality I know it can be.
See, so we got the 5-minute warning, so we probably have time for one more question, and then we'll kind of wrap it up a little.
I think actually because you guys have been answering questions in the chat throughout, we don't have any other questions for you right now.
Okay. All right. Well, let's wrap it up all nicely with a bow then. So, Laura, could you end with where our viewers can find your work and what you're working on right now?
Which one of us first? Okay, me.
She said me first, so you can have a moment to gather your brilliance.
Go.
So I have a website, lpalmerchronicles.com. You can find all my social media on there. I do have many books in the work, obviously, but it's going to be a little bit before I have those ready for publication. So stay tuned. They will be exciting and exhilarating and change the world and make it better.
You posted your website, your blog or website earlier. If you would be so kind to repost that for the audience, I think that'd be great. Because I'm definitely going to take a look at it later because I love myself some Twisted Fairy Tales. As far as my stuff, you can find it at rowannorthillustrations.org. I will put that in chat once again. The things I'm working on right now, I have my new watercolor set that I'm working on right now, and the focus of that is all color shift iridescence. And it's called Elysian Spring, so it's going to be bright and pastel spring colors. That I am working on a couple of new books, and hopefully I'll be posting those on my website soon if I can bring myself to put in the time and the spoons to sell. But yeah, so I've been doing a lot of bookbinding. You can see the beginnings of one right here. What am I not working on is the better question. I have a whole lot of ideas right now. That's the problem. And so little time. I've got a few commissions I'm working on, as well as just working on kind of rebranding myself, getting into resin and paper making and all that fun stuff.
Awesome. And I, when I'm not moderating panels, I'm also the director of acquisitions at Immortal Works Press. If any of our viewers are writers and you have a manuscript that you're shopping around, go ahead and query me. You can find the Immortal Works submission form at immortalworks.press/submissions. I think that's pretty much it.